on how to be able to do adjustments yourself the way appraisers do? Okay. Oh shoot, and she just stepped out, so that didn't get the review. Because basically the class that I was going to create was comp selection and then comp adjustments. And from an appraiser's point of view, so you know how to do it. Or at least you understand how we do it.
Ask us again when she comes.
Okay. well, it's always the best survey. So, this stuff, like I said, I will send to you. Okay, where is it? Okay, let's work from the start. So, one of the simple things I do, especially when I review residential appraisals done for lender work, is within the 1004 form. You guys know what that is? That's just the appraisal form, the 1004. There is a definition of market value that's in the form. So when you're doing that report, that's the definition of value that you should be applying to your sales. So this addresses, and it's funny, it's not really happening this much in this market anymore, or you guys can tell me. This addresses the age-old question of people always ask me, they use short sales or they use foreclosures. That's a mistake, because in the report, the definition of value used on the 1004 is fair market value. I'll put this in a nutshell. It's typical buyer, typical seller, not under undue distress, and what is it, like normal exposure time on the market. So a very simple check that I do when I review stuff, or I do a lot of forensic review for Fannie Mae. It's another thing where it leads to going after bad appraisers, is you just look at the report and you look at the definition value used. If that appraiser didn't make a comment in the addendum saying I'm using liquidation value, or I'm using foreclosure value, or I'm using some other definition of value that's in our appraisal dictionary, the first thing I'll do is say, okay, well, his value of definition is used as fair market value. I'll go look at the comps. If there's a short sale, an REO, or foreclosure, that's a mistake.
But if they adjust them,
it's still kind of a mistake because it's not the same value definition. So the definition of value from a fair market value will knock out REOs, foreclosures, and short sales. Now, I know and here's to me the main thing that I see a lot in reviews is that's the definition of value used, fair market value. Then some sales are thrown in there, foreclosure, short sale, whatever, REO, and no explanation. I'll tell you right now, the biggest weakness in any residential report is lack of narrative, lack of explanation. And that comes from having to turn and burn reports. I mean, you can use a foreclosure, but I would expect to see narration in the report saying that the market, something along the line as the market is saturated with foreclosures and REOs, therefore the REOs and foreclosures are competing head to head with what we call arm's length transactions. Arm's length transactions is another way of saying fair market value. Yes?
If a property at short sale is listed for $400,000 and its real market value is like, let's say, $500, why wouldn't the appraiser value it as $500?
The first question I would ask, when I ask the review, and I know this is, obviously it's based on my experience in this area, there's never seems to be a lack of sales. So there's never a lack of data. So I will ask them, it's like, okay, you used this foreclosure or your REO, you didn't explain to me why you think they're competing head to head. Because, I mean, you can explain it away or if you can get the market data saying, yeah, there's so many foreclosures in this area that they are on the same level as arm's length transactions, then that's legitimate. Now, where that tipping point is what is it, the Appraisal Institute just came up with, if you drop a card, I'll send that to you too if you're interested. It's the whole way appraisers should approach it, because it's been a huge gray area for years. Because it's like, is it 50%? Is it 70%? Is it, and then it's, market segmentation. It's like, at what point does the market become a foreclosure market? Now, some of the areas in Santa Clara, I mean, you can have things that are foreclosure markets, and other ones they're just not. So you wouldn't use. My answer to your question would be, I would ask the appraiser, are there other sales that are just arm's length? Because to me, it would be very surprising to say, well, there weren't any sales, so I had to use foreclosures.
I guess my question is just the fact that the property is a short sale, why could it be, why is it appraised lower in general?
Why isn't it? With short sales, condition. But what I was going to say, in this area, some of them do compete head to head because there's so low inventory that people don't care. I'll tell you one of the things I've seen recently with my lender work is the, what would you call it, the delta between a remodeled home and a not remodeled home has gone,
Right.
and it's frustrating as an appraiser because you go and you say, oh, this house is gorgeous. And then because our wonderful MLS has all those pictures now, and you look at the comp and you go ding, ding, ding through the pictures, and you go, wow, look at 1980s tile or carpet and everything. And you look at the prices and there's barely any difference. And it's, and going out to open houses and talking to realtors are saying, because people around here are fine with going, I mean, it's the inventory problem. And that is, oh my God, there's a house in the neighborhood I want, I'll take it and I will pay fair market value for it. I don't care if it's still 1980s or 70s interior.
Question?
Yes.
How do you deal with an upwardly moving market within this concept of fair market value? Here's your comps, and you see that the active listings are climbing, and everything else is indicating that the market is definitely changing.
Okay.
That's where we are.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you deal with the crazy appreciation we get? And here's a good time to say there is a difference between appraisal procedure and what the lenders will accept. That question, it's very easy to answer.
Yeah.
The steps that I would take as an appraiser is, okay, I get the sales contract and see what the sales date is. I would go on the MLS and try to see if I could find sales that closed on the same day. Because usually, the problem with appraising is one of the challenges is that all of our closed sales are historical sales. So if you have a market that's trending up really fast, we're always a little bit behind. The way to adjust that is go to MLS, put in a specific date range, and try to find comps that sold on the same date as your sales contract. And then if you can't find those, or you can find some of those, that's great. Then you add to it, you do a trend analysis. You get a bunch of the sales in the neighborhood, you show how they're ramping up, you relate that to a percentage adjustment, and you apply it. So you can do that, and you can be the new high in the neighborhood. One thing appraisers hate doing is praising the new high. And it doesn't really have to do with appraisal practice. It has to do with, with one of the lenders I work with, and they're a good lender, I just did it. I agreed with the sales price. Actually, this is probably about 6 or 7 months ago now. I was the new high. They cut my value. And I did a bunch of, lovely charts, pretty charts. And they literally said, Brian, we like your work, but what it came down to, as I understood it, it was a lending decision, not an appraisal decision. They weren't comfortable. Yeah, it's a risk analysis. Yes.
Wouldn't it help if you could get the sales price on some pending?
Yeah, I do that too, and I appreciate it when you guys tell me the sales price and you're not supposed to.
Well, it doesn't.
And I don't rat you out. But my point being is, in appraisal practice, I can prove market appreciation, just like I can prove markets diving. And it's always funny that lenders have no problem when I'm diving, but when I'm climbing, they get cold feet. Yeah. Yes.
With all the multiple offers, okay, properties are going 10, 15, 20% above list price.
Yeah.
What happens if we bring you the first page of the multiple offer contracts to substantiate the price? Listed at 9.
I use it as market data because I've had realtors tell me, this had 10 multiple offers and everything. To me, it's much easier to find recent sales and show a trend analysis. And like I said, showing that analysis and relating that to a percentage of increase of appreciation, and then making that adjustment, and then my final estimate of value ends up being the high in the neighborhood, I have no problem doing that. The problem is banks won't. And like I said, this bank that I work with, very good bank, they actually have appraisers on staff so they understand the process. They just said, well, Brian, it's nice, and they cut it $50,000.
Does it make any difference how much money the buyer is putting down?
Well, that does, because because whatever the difference is, you can pay cash and you're fine. You guys know that.
Yeah.
That's what I always tell people. You want the house, just bring in more cash. Yes.
Appraisers tend to call, like if you're looking and you are having trouble finding those comps, do you look and see see something pending and call that agent
Yep.
on a pending.
Yeah, that's why. Well, you guys use the MLS listings, right? Obviously. I mean, I love that thing because it's so you can tweak the data so much. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll sit there and say, I'll look at my date of inspection, and then I'll, put my search parameters in and around that area. Now, a lot of times it comes up with nothing, and then you have to go out and expand outward, and that makes it a little weaker as the further you get away. Yes. Oop. Who's?
Vendors don't like pending comparison.
Well, you can throw pendings on the report, but you have to have 3 sales closed. I mean, here's a great example. One of the easiest adjustments you can get is a time adjustment. There's tons of data from, Altos Research, San Jose Mercury News, MLS listings. I mean, there's tons and tons of data that you can prove, appreciation, depreciation, whatever. It's very simple to do a time adjustment. I can't tell you how many times I'll put in a report a sale that's across the street that was 6 months old. I don't have to make any single adjustment on it except for a time adjustment. And the bank will come back to me and say, well, Brian, we got to have 2 within 90 days. And if there's nothing, I try to explain to them there's nothing. And even the good bank I work with had me throw comps on, and this is talking to their head